Hello and welcome to our SBT Sunday teachings. My name is Venerable Tarpa. Before we begin, let's take a moment to appreciate our wonderful community gathered here today. Today, I feel fortunate to sit as a member of this kind community in the safety and security of like-minded friends, sharing this present moment with others dedicated to the cultivation of goodness. Today, I'm grateful for the direction and support that this community provides, a community worthy of my time and commitment, a community where my efforts have meaning, purpose, and are appreciated. Today, I'm thankful for this community of awakening, a place to gain the knowledge and skills to improve my life, a family, a home, and a sanctuary for all of us seeking refuge from the storm. And let's remember, as conscientious practitioners, we must recognize our responsibility to the world, to strive to live skillfully while helping others to do the same, to strive to live in balance and harmony with nature and others, to strive to gain mastery over our minds and embody our true benevolent nature, to expand our hearts and minds, transcending our shared human limitations, to not intentionally harm sentient life or our planet, and to maturely accept and embrace the reality of our situation while striving to improve it. Again, welcome to our Sunday teachings. Today we're going to be examining taking refuge in Buddhism. So at the end of the month, we're offering Refuge Vows once again, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to do a refresher course on the topic. We engage with the Buddhist path through study, practice, and training. So for most of us, we've found Buddhism through reading books or watching teachings, which was my case. Other people find Buddhism through secular meditation programs that maybe they did at work and they found it beneficial and they wanted to get deeper into learning about Buddhism. However, when practitioners become serious about their path and develop a wish to make a real commitment to their practice, they often develop the desire to begin their formal Buddhist training. So training consists of taking refuge vows, holding precepts, and commitments. And so when we talk about taking vows, we're talking about vows and precepts of virtuous conduct and what we'd call awakened behavior. Now, the big difference here is this idea of commitment. So in the beginning, we're studying Buddhism, we're reading about it, but we kind of do this in a half-hearted way, oftentimes, where we do it when it's convenient, when we have time for it. We read when we have time, we go to teachers when we have time, but we kind of balance it with the other things that are going on in our lives. But then there reaches a point in our practice where we become really serious about the path, where we start to see the real benefits of Buddhism. We start to, and not just us, but even the people in our lives, our family, our friends, they start to notice this wonderful change in us. And there's a certain point where you become convinced that this is a path that's really beneficial, that you believe that out of all the different paths around the world, there's so many, that you're really drawn to this and you believe that this is the one that has the greatest potential to benefit your life. And so at that point, you decide to be committed to your path. So this idea of commitment is, again, not just following Buddhism, meditating when you have time, when you feel like it, but instead you decide, I want to make a daily commitment and I want to see where this path leads me. You know, and there's a point where you're convinced that this is the path for you, and you have already tasted the benefits and you want more of that. So at this point, um, you would ask a teacher to begin your formal training. And formal training consists first and foremost with taking refuge and receiving refuge vows. So the term refuge uh, can be understood as going for protection or safety. That's the textbook definition. So in a lot of ways, we already take refuge in things, you know. We take refuge from a doctor when we're sick. So the idea of refuge here is we go for advice, protection, support, advice, right? So we go to the advice for a doctor when sick. We take refuge in the medical community. And they often use the example of taking refuge from a storm. In Buddhism, we're taking refuge in the Buddha and believing that the Buddha's advice, the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha's path is a way for us to live a good life, to get the benefits we wish. And at this point, uh, we would take refuge. And refuge is basically, it's a formal commitment to actualizing the Buddhist path and your own commitment to your own awakening. Meaning that when taking refuge, you believe that your own awakening is possible. You've already tasted it. And you take refuge in your own potential for that awakening. This is called bodhicitta in Buddhism. I'm sorry, this is called Buddha nature in Buddhism. The potential of your own awakening. To take refuge is to make a formal commitment to actualize the Buddhist teachings, a commitment, again, to your own awakening. It's to pledge to your teacher, to the three jewels, to uphold the basic tenets of Buddhism. It's to declare from today forward that you're going to put the Buddhist teachings into practice and fully embrace and embody the Buddhist path. When taking refuge in the three jewels are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. To take refuge in the Buddha is to look to the teacher for guidance, inspiration, protection, and support. To take refuge in the Dharma is to look to the teachings, training, and path for guidance, inspiration, protection, and support. And to take refuge in the Sangha is to look to the awakened community for guidance, inspiration, protection, and support. Out of these three, they say that the most important of the refuges is to take refuge in the Dharma. And of course, here the Dharma is the Buddhist teachings and path that he laid out to guide us towards awakening. So out of the three, the Dharma is always asserted as being the most important. So with that said, how about we take a look at the vows and precepts? So vows are defined as a solemn pledge or promise. So within Buddhism, the foundation of Buddhism is on goodness, is on virtues, on ethics. And Buddhists believe that holding vows to be a profound spiritual practice, bringing great benefit to the practitioners who hold them. To take vows is to promise to uphold certain precepts or rules of ethical and virtuous behavior that are deemed conducive to spiritual practice. Vows and the virtuous conduct that they support also benefit us by creating a more harmonious community. Now, for a monastic, that's a harmonious community within a monastery, but this is also a harmonious community within your own homes, as many of our Sangha members will attest to, that when we start practicing, the harmony that we gain in our own practice is found also in our homes. We create ourselves in our homes. You create it in your relationship with your spouse, with your children. Vows are a commitment to oneself, one's teaching, the three jewels. And again, you could say it's a logical extension of our ethical volition. That's a big phrase. So it's the actual engagement with our values. It's putting our values into what we do, putting our values where our mouth is, as they'd say in America. Yeah. We put our ideals into practice in order to reach our goals. Vows are always taken voluntarily, with the practitioner themselves deciding just how committed they wish to be. The teacher is here just to facilitate. According to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, vows are not forced on us by an external authority. They are trainings we voluntarily uphold because we want to fulfill our spiritual aims. Very pretty, huh? So if vows are a promise, then precepts are the actual rules. So we take a vow to uphold precepts. Now, textbook definition of precepts are guidelines of personal conduct intended to swiftly facilitate our spiritual progress. So, and again, according to His Holiness, precepts are not absolute rules, but instead guidelines intended to stabilize and deepen our commitment to our spiritual path. So instead of seeing our precepts as laws or rules that we have to abide with, that's really not the intention. The intention here, these are guidelines to move us towards our spiritual aims. And our spiritual aims, of course, are happiness, right? We talk about that in Buddhism. Our spiritual aims are happiness, awakening, nirvana, enlightenment, whichever your personal goal is. And the Buddha himself in the sutras asserts that it's the spirit of the precepts that matters most. So I think often in some traditions, some Buddhist traditions, they really become just laws that some traditions are just completely preoccupied with precepts. And I always thought it was a mistake. I think if you hold on to them too tight, you don't get the beneficial effect. They say to some, holding vows feels like oppression. Again, that you have all these rules that you must follow. But to others, they're a source of great liberation. I've always seen my own precepts like that. As a fully ordained monastic, I hold 253 monastic vows, but also bodhisattva vows and refuge vows. I think I hold something like 308 precepts a day. But I've never seen them as a source of oppression. I've always seen them as a liberating force of my life. Each precept liberates me from that activity. Each precept guides me towards awakening. And for myself, I think what's really important is that, especially with SBT, our precepts and all of our various vows that we have, refuge vows, bodhisattva vows, lay ordination vows, they're there to paint a picture. And they're there to paint a picture of an awakened being, to serve as an archetype. And so when we look to our vows, we're actually looking at awakened behavior itself. This is a roadmap to awakening. And when you're engaged with your precepts, you're engaged in awakened behavior. You're mimicking the behavior of a great awakened being, a Buddha. So with the precepts, each precept outlines clear and practical and precise parameters pertaining to our intentions and behaviors. Holding precepts creates a great level of clarity and stability in our lives by outlining predetermined behaviors that clearly dictate appropriate intentions, actions, reactions. And by maintaining pure precepts, we protect and increase our mental, emotional, and spiritual development. For in moments of difficulty or indecision, in which you may find yourself susceptible to making poor choices, your precepts will remain clear. It's at these times that you can rely on your precepts to protect you by ensuring that your intentions, your choices, your actions, and reactions are appropriate and coincide with the Buddhist teachings. When I became a monk, they were always talking about how my robes protected me, that by wearing them, we're protected. And I always thought it was somehow metaphysical or mystical, that that's what they meant, that somehow the Buddhas in the heavens are looking down on me and protecting me. And of course, that's not a Buddhist belief. We don't believe we can call upon the Buddhas to help. But later I started to understand it on a different level. And the fact that I realized what they were really protecting me from was myself. And it wasn't the idea of the robes is just a metaphor. It's actually the vows and precepts that are doing the protecting. And so, and what they do is they definitely protect me from myself. The vows protect me from acting in ways that harm myself. The vows stop me from acting in ways that create mental and emotional instability and chaos in my life. The robes physically, from the outside, visually, they protect me from, I can't act badly when I'm in robes. If I'm at the store at the counter, I can't yell at the cashier to hurry up if you're in robes. Everybody stare at you. They force me to act appropriately, or better, they remind me to act appropriately. So this is the idea that your precepts, when you take them, you should look at them as a liberating force, that these are showing you the way to liberation, and they're liberating you from these things that are stopping you from awakening. Okay, so I would like to now take a second. Let's look at the actual vows. So let's take a peek here at these. So when we take refuge with SBT, these are some of these are the precepts and commitments that we take. So we first vow to honor the basic Buddhist tenets, and that is here it has goodness, kindness, friendliness, nonviolence, honesty and self-control, generosity, compassion and understanding, maturity, humility and personal responsibility, and to uphold the 10 precepts of refuge. I think those are pretty clear. So I wanted to talk about the vows here. I'm sorry, the precepts. I often use the two words as synonymous, and they're not. The vow is the promise, the precepts are the rules or the guidelines, right? Okay, and so here, the vows are often we have the 10 virtuous and 10 non-virtuous acts. This is what SBT uses for our precepts. What's interesting is the various traditions all have different refuge precepts. They're never the same. And even within a tradition like the Tibetan tradition, so many different lamas will ask students different things. Some will ask uh, the three of the first lay vows. There's a very traditional set of precepts for refuge that are quite religious. So I didn't care for that. So we chose this one. And as you can see on the left, we have them divided into three acts of the body, three verbal acts, and four verbal acts, and three mental acts. Okay, with that said, let's go through them. So the unique thing here is when you look at both the virtuous and the non-virtuous, when you look at the opposites, it brings such clarity into exactly what the precept is asserting. So the first one, respecting, protecting, and nurturing life. Clearly, this means not destroying sentient life. Number two, respecting others' property, not stealing. Number three, avoiding sexual misconduct. And sexual misconduct is understood as sexual harm, either mental, emotional, or physical. And the non-virtuous act is sexual harm itself. And in a sense, what we're saying is engage only in wholesome sexuality that doesn't harm. Now, the four verbal acts, which a lot of practitioners say are the hardest out of all of them to hold. The first one, easy, speak the truth and be honest. No lying, no false speech. Number five, speaking politely and kindly. And its opposite, harsh, threatening, or rude speech. Number six, speaking in ways that create harmony. That's a beautiful precept, not always easy to do 24/7. And its opposite, slanderous speech. Number seven, speaking meaningfully and moderately. And its opposite, idle chatter. I do have to take a moment and explain this or just bring some clarity to it. When we talk about the first one, speaking meaningfully, so this is a bit of a difficult one to discern because so many times what we would normally see as meaningless language, you're talking about TV programs, talking about the weather, small talk. Actually, in a lot of ways, it has a very meaningful role. So, let alone is it a gateway into other conversations. When you first meet with folks, people are nervous, and we have these these uh, these little games we play, and we talk about the weather, we talk about this and that, and it's just to get things moving. But in other times, like say you're visiting your grandmother, and she likes to talk to you about her TV shows, and she likes to talk about what she's been shopping for, what a lot of people would say is meaningless conversation. But if you look underneath it, she's really just trying to connect. She's using this idle conversation as a way to express emotions underneath it. She wants to be heard, she wants to be listened to, and also she might ask questions that are quite meaningless of you. But again, the meaning is the connection underneath it all. So you have to be very careful in how you discern meaningfully, right? And then the other term, moderately. Now, this is a difficult one for some people. Some people are chatters and some people are quiet. No problem. And of course, all in between. Oftentimes, chatty people they express their chattiness from a place of goodness, from a place of care and love, right? And then quiet people, sometimes they're not in a bad mood or anything. They enjoy the peace, they enjoy the quiet. The thing about it is you have to decide what moderately means for you. If you're a chatty person, it doesn't mean stop being yourself. It just means for you, bring that into moderation. And the way we do that is we just try to be aware of it and just bring a little bit of space into the conversation. And especially out of an act of generosity, so other people have opportunity to engage, right? So both meaningful and moderately, we have to kind of watch. The last three are mental acts. Number 8, cultivating contentment and not attachment. And its opposite, covetedness and envy. Covetousness, wanting, wanting, wanting. Number 9 is cultivating goodwill. And this is basic goodness and virtue. And its opposite, ill will. Number 10 is cultivating right view. And its opposite is wrong view. So we study and explain right view in almost all of our programs. Right view is defined technically in Buddhism as having the right view or right perspective of the true nature of ourselves and the true nature of reality. And what that means is having the right understanding of who and what you are, how you relate to others, how you get on in your environment, what's your relationship with reality itself. It's having the proper understanding of life, how life works. And as you can imagine, if you understand life, if you understand how life works, it's easier to get the things you desire. Right view is the pinnacle in Buddhism. Right view to some is synonymous with enlightenment itself. Okay, those are our 10 vows, our 10 precepts of refuge. Oh, let's share this one as well. Along with our precepts, we also have commitments that we pledge to uphold. And refuge commitments are to uphold our daily training. And so we have the vows themselves that you would pledge to follow that we talked about. But then you're also vowing to uphold daily training. And that's of affirmations, practice, and proper behavior. Affirmations are the secular version of prayers. They're reminders of your practice, of your direction, of your motivations, and of the various practices that we do. Practice can be meditation, mindfulness, contemplation, and proper behavior is outlined within the vows that we just talked about. Secondly, it's to recite your refuge affirmations and pledge daily. That's part of your practice. Every morning you wake up, there's a handful of refuge affirmations. It doesn't take very long. I think the whole morning affirmation practice is maybe about probably less than 10 minutes. And so we pledge to do that every day. And then third, we pledge to purify our vows monthly by honoring the day of observance. The last Sunday of every month is the day of observance. The Buddha himself created the day of observance, and it's a day that we set aside everything else and we focus strongly on our practice. Usually, Sangha members would come to the monastery, practice together, and vow holders, especially monastics, have a ceremony to purify their vows. And so we do that once a month here at SBT, but not just monastics. We allow everyone to purify their vows, refuge, bodhisattva vows, lay ordained vows. And so it's a short ceremony, about a half an hour long. And but you are taking a pledge to come and purify your vows every month. If you can't make the ceremony, in the back of your practice guide, there's a ceremony that you can do on your own. Another important aspect of refuge is an aspect called the mind of refuge. And um, some assert that the most important element when taking refuge is having the right intention, referred to as the mind of refuge. According to the Buddha, when through study, contemplation, and meditation, you've come to acknowledge the fundamental, unsatisfactory nature of enlightened, unenlightened existence, and wishing for freedom from that suffering, we turn to the three jewels, believing them to be a viable path to liberation. According to the Buddha, we should see our ignorance and physical and mental and emotional pain as an illness, to see the Buddha as the doctor who prescribes the proper medicine and dosage, to see the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, as the medicine needed to heal, and to see the Sangha as a community who helps us in nursing us back to health. Another interesting part of refuge is refuge names. With SBT, we weren't sure whether we were going to offer refuge names or not because we're a secular group. I remember at the beginning when we started, we weren't even sure if we were going to offer refuge. We weren't sure if these ceremonies really were secular in nature. And but so many members really wanted to make a commitment to the practice, which means taking refuge. They were studying, they were practicing, we were all doing it together, but there was something missing, and what it was that sense of commitment. And of course, they could have committed by themselves. They could have sat in their bedrooms and wrote down and read some kind of commitment on their own. But it's not the same as being committed with a group that you're practicing with. There's something really magical, beautiful about that. So we decided, yes, indeed, refuge is a wonderful thing. Let's offer refuge. And then we weren't sure what language we wanted to give refuge names in. This group arises from the Tibetan tradition, and anyways, we decided that we were going to go with Tibetan names. They're quite pretty. Refuge names symbolize rebirth, in a sense, in the Buddhist teachings. So when you take refuge, you're given a new name and you're reborn into the Buddha Sangha. You're a fresh individual. You're leaving all your problems behind, or at least you think you are, and you get a new name. So Tibetan names are a little bit funny. Tibetan names are backwards. First of all, Tibetan names don't have a surname. So everyone in a Tibetan family will have different first and last names. I think it's one of the only culture that does that. They don't follow the family through names. And the other thing strange is parents usually don't name their own children. You go to the Lama and the Lama names your children. And sometimes the Lamas end up giving really strange names. Like they'll often just name them after the day of the week that they're born, because the Lama's just running out of names. There's not that many Tibetan names. And I have friends that have names that are Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. But Tibetan names are kind of backwards. So the teacher names you. So you get the teacher's name. You're traced through the teacher. So, but instead of it being the last one, it's the first one. So the first name is the lineage or teacher name. The second name is your personal name. So when I took monastic vows, I was named by the Dalai Lama Tenzin Tarpa. Now, the Dalai Lama's name is Tenzin Gyatso. So I received the name Tenzin from His Holiness. So that becomes my first name, which is more like my surname. And then he gives me the second name. Tenzin Gyatso. Tenzin means the holder of, and Gyatso means ocean. And the holder of pertains to teachings, the holder of the teachings of. So Tenzin Gyatso is often said to be the holder of an ocean of teachings. The Dalai Lama named me Tenzin Tarpa, and it's the holder of the teachings of liberation. Tarpa means liberation. So for each person that takes refuge, we give them a new refuge name. And it's up to the individual how much they want to use that. So I'd like to now turn to the actual practices that are involved. So what we've covered so far are the vows and precepts, pledges, but the actual practice I'd like to cover now. So at refuge level, this is training and practices. So within Buddhism, the path of happiness, including awakening, nirvana, and enlightenment, is cultivated through the Buddhist threefold path: the development of higher virtue, higher understanding, and higher awareness. So the development of higher virtue is the virtuous part of the path, and and we do that by holding our vows, by cultivating our beautiful benevolent qualities, basic goodness, awakened behavior. The development of higher understanding is the wisdom aspect of the path pertaining to the development of insight and understanding of the Buddhist teachings and the nature of ourselves in reality. Now, when we talk about this kind of understanding, we're not just talking about book knowledge. We're not talking about just reading, going to classes. The other side of this is experiential understanding of life itself through real life experience, through your experience of virtue and non-virtue, your experience of the benefits and results of practice, you learning about how the world works. So it's both study and real world experience. Third, the development of higher awareness, the practice aspect of the path pertaining to the development of higher mental and meditative states. And of course, you could imagine this has to do with meditation and mindfulness and practices, the practice of presence and stillness, of just working directly with our awareness and how we hold it each day. The term higher here expresses that we are striving towards the peak level of these aspects. We're not talking about uh, just everyday qualities. We all try to be good. We all try to have wisdom and understanding. We all try to be somewhat aware of our world around us. But here we're talking about much higher levels than we commonly strive for. These are higher levels of each one of the qualities. The threefold path is usually symbolized by this triangle. And so virtue is at the bottom, and that's the foundation of everything in Buddhism. That's the foundation of the path. And then we have understanding and awareness. And of course, this symbolizes the inner relationship of these, the holistic way that we cultivate these qualities all together. So, with that said, let's get to the actual practices. So, at refuge level, daily study, practice, and training consists of studying, practicing, and upholding our refuge vows, our precepts and commitments, and cultivating and realizing the Four Noble Truths. So we're going to be giving a class on this week in our retreat, but we also have videos and material available for you on the topic. So we cultivate the Four Noble Truths through study, contemplation, and meditation, and through the practice of the four tasks, the Eightfold Path, abiding on the breath, and the practice of shining. These practices are described and outlined in your practice guide that you receive when you take refuge vows. And also we have videos on the various practices. This Sunday, we're going to be offering refuge in our monthly online retreats. And if anybody's interested in taking them with SBT, please share the name you'd like to be put on the certificates themselves, as well as your email address, and just drop me a message, and we can facilitate that. And I'm thinking if I have one more to share. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's taking refuge with SBT. Now, beyond refuge, we the idea is that you take refuge, and of course, as you can see, there's a bit of study and practice and contemplation to be done and training to be done. We recommend that people hold each level of vows for roughly a year in order to perfect all of those. Uh, what happens is in the next set of vows, which would be Bodhisattva vows, we would lay another set of vows on top of those. So we're always continuing to practice one set of vows, and we're just layering on them. As we progress and we develop clarity and understanding, we can take on more practice, right? And so after taking refuge vows and really understanding them in the study material, then you might find that you would like to engage in a deeper level of practice and make a stronger commitment, at which point you can take bodhisattva vows. Bodhisattva vows, roughly, a bodhisattva is a person who uh, dedicates his life to awakening for the benefit of all beings. It's an incredible altruistic path and a very profound and deep one. It's to uphold 26 precepts of awakened conduct. So these 26 precepts go on top of the 10 precepts of refuge, and you do them all. And the Bodhisattva vows are absolutely beautiful. You can download the practice guide and read them for yourself, and they really are precepts of awakened conduct. Then further levels of practice can take you to taking lay vows, lay ordained vows with SBT. And lay ordained vows, again, are just a deeper level of practice and commitment. And there's an additional 46 vows of awakened behavior that go on top of that. So, does anybody have any questions? I had a lot of material to cover. My apologies. Oh, let me take this off. Does anybody have any questions on taking refuge? We have quite a few people taking it this weekend, so I'm excited about that. Did I offer a pretty clear case? David, do you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions. Personally, I could listen to that lesson every week without losing the benefit. I just think it's very inspirational. But my question my question was um, when you were saying that you took refuge in the three jewels, you took refuge in the teacher. Now you're our teacher. Would it be fair to say that we are taking refuge in you?
Actually, refuge, you don't take refuge with an organization. You're always taking refuge with the Buddha. So whether you take refuge with SPT or anyone else, you're not taking refuge with us. You're taking refuge with the Buddha, the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, which
Okay.
I'm not a part of. Now, Tibetans who have a lot of emphasis on the Lama, they actually added a little. They made the four jewels, which is the Lama, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and being that well, the Lama is the one who connects you with the Buddha. And so, well, we don't do that here. So, a wonderful question. No, I'm just facilitating it. You're taking refuge in the Buddha, and yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome, David.
Well, I'll ask you another question about the sea Jules just before I go out anybody else's show. The third one was taking refuge in the enlightened community, in the awakened community. Now, apart from possibly you, I don't know anybody that's awakened. So,
I'm
how,
awakening. I wouldn't say I'm awakened.
how do I take refuge in something that I know? I don't know anybody in that category. What does that
So
mean?
it's a, yeah, actually the term Sangha can be a little bit complicated. Sangha can be seen, and Sangha is congregation or spiritual community. Sangha can be defined in a lot of different ways, even in the sutras themselves. Ultimately, they think at the highest level, Sangha is the community of awakened beings, seen or unseen. And that could be past teachers, and it could be taken mystically, metaphysically. This array of beings that are wonderful, especially in Tantra, where they believe that great practitioners or Buddhists can create their own heavens and live there and help us. But then some see on the next level down, some see Sangha as only being monastics, what we call the monastic Sangha. Still others will see the Sangha as Buddhist practitioners of any kind. This is what we look at it as. Everyone here is our Sangha. And to be honest, people use the same word and they can mean it differently. I'll say monastic Sangha, lay Sangha for our ordained group, but we're all Sangha. And so it was tricky on how to word that, but that's the traditional wording. So you don't want to take refuge in the guy that started a month ago that's sitting next to you that keeps getting all the questions wrong. You want to make sure that you're taking refuge in the Sangha members that seem like they have their act together. Does that make sense?
Thanks
Yeah.
very much, Tapa. That's very good.
Uh, you're welcome. Any other questions? I was afraid it would be a very dry teaching. It's a bit of a dry topic. I couldn't find any places to get some humor in. But okay, if there are no more questions, um, so we'll be offering refuge this Sunday, February 25th, during our monthly online retreat. If you're interested, just contact me. And I think that that's all we had to share. To me, refuge is a extraordinary thing. I was when I came to Buddhism, there wasn't any Buddhism around me. This was 30 years ago. We had computers, so I was on all of my contact with Buddhism was on computers and books and things like that. And I was becoming a really serious practitioner, but there were no teachers around me. There was a Zen temple downtown in a really bad neighborhood, but and it was created by indigenous Japanese. It wasn't Western Buddhist, though the people that went there were mostly Western. And so I started in Zen, and but at some point, I knew that I needed to find a teacher, and I had a deep desire to take refuge. It was profound with me because I was a really strong practitioner. I was meditating. I spent every dollar I had each week on books. I could barely afford food, but I was buying Dharma books. They were just stacked up around me in my little room, and I just for me it was such a big deal because it was so rare, and there was nowhere I could take refuge. And finally, the only thing I could do, I sold everything I owned and I moved across America to California to a Buddhist group in the mountains, and uh, and I was living with these funny Tibetan Lama guys that I I read about in books, but it was weird to actually be there with them all. And I was able to take refuge. And so to me, it was an extraordinary thing because it was so rare. And to this day, it's just one of the greatest experiences of my life. So I support anybody that would like to take refuge, and I'd love to facilitate that as well. So, with that said, let's end today's teaching with our altruistic affirmation. May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well, may all be present, free of past regret and future worry, may all abide in constant appreciation, which is a source of great joy and contentment, may all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Thanks everybody for coming. Remember that the SBT community was created for one purpose and one purpose only, to support you, the practitioner. See everybody next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tarpa. Thank you.
Bye. Great
Thank you,
teaching.
Tarpa.